The alarm bells rang through the massive space station that served as the heart of the Galactic Council. Red lights flashed in every corridor as beings from dozens of different worlds rushed to their posts. Something terrible was happening, and everyone could feel it. Commander Veltar pressed his four-fingered hand against the communication panel. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Through the main screen, he could see the dark shapes moving between the stars. The Void Swarm had found them. "This is Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet." He spoke into the transmitter. His voice shook despite his efforts to stay calm. "We are sending an emergency request to the Galactic Council. Our 7 star systems are under attack. We need help immediately. The creatures attacking them were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The Void Swarm traveled in living ships that looked like giant insects made of black metal and bone. These bioships could change and adapt to any weapon fired at them. The first time the Zephyrians shot their energy cannons, the creatures absorbed the blasts and grew stronger. When they tried particle beams, the swarm learned to deflect them. Every attack only made the enemy more dangerous. Veltar watched through his ship's windows as another Zephyrian cruiser exploded in bright blue flames. The bioships swarmed around it like hungry animals, feeding on the energy from the explosion. Each destroyed ship made the swarm larger and more powerful. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 4th planet," reported his communications officer. "The swarm has consumed everything there." Veltar closed his eyes for a moment. Millions of innocent people had lived on that planet. Now they were gone, and the swarm was growing stronger from their deaths. 3,000 light-years away, the Galactic Council received Veltar's desperate message. The council chamber was a huge round room where representatives from hundreds of different species gathered to make decisions for the galaxy. Today, the chamber buzzed with worried voices as the leaders tried to understand what they were facing. General Crix stood at the center of the chamber. He was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and large black eyes. As the council's military advisor, he had seen many wars, but nothing like this. "The Void Swarm is not like our usual enemies, General," Crix explained to the gathered representatives. "They are a hive mind. Every creature thinks as one. They learn from every battle and adapt their tactics. Most importantly, they absorb energy from our weapons and use it to make themselves stronger." A representative from the Alterian Empire raised her hand. "What about our plasma cannons? Surely our most advanced weapons can stop them." General Crix shook his head. The Zephyrians had plasma cannons. The swarm absorbed the energy and grew larger. They tried quantum disruptors, ion beams, and even antimatter missiles. Nothing worked. The swarm just adapted and became stronger. The chamber fell silent. For over 1,000 years, the galaxy had lived in peace. Most conflicts were solved with words, not weapons. The few wars that did happen were usually over quickly because all civilized species used similar, energy-based weapons and defense systems. "What can we do?" asked the representative from the Crystalline Confederacy. "If our best weapons are useless, how can we fight them?" One by one, the different species offered what help they could. The Alterian Empire promised to send 50 of their oldest battle cruisers. The Centauri Republic offered 100 outdated fighters. The Vegan Alliance said they could spare some defensive platforms that were scheduled to be scrapped next year. General Crix looked at the offers and sighed. Even with all this help, it would not be enough. The weapons being offered were old and weak. Against an enemy that grew stronger from energy attacks, sending more energy weapons seemed pointless. "There's one more option," said a small voice. From the back of the chamber, everyone turned to look at Ambassador Zin, a tiny creature with purple fur and large ears. She represented the newer members of the Galactic Council, including some very strange worlds that had been discovered recently. "What do you suggest?" asked General Crix. Earth Ambassador Zin said simply, "We could ask the humans for help." The chamber erupted in laughter. Several representatives nearly fell from their chairs. General Crix's large eyes widened in disbelief. "The Deathworlders," General Crix said. "Those primitive creatures, they barely have faster-than-light travel. Their ships are made of simple metal. Their weapons still use chemical explosions and tiny metal projectiles. They know nothing about energy shields or plasma weapons. Exactly, said Ambassador Zen. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need weapons that the swarm has never seen before. General Crix waved his hand dismissively. Possible. Their weapons are too primitive. What good are metal bullets against creatures that can absorb the power of a star? But other representatives began to murmur among themselves. Earth was indeed a strange place. It was what the galaxy called a death world, a planet so dangerous that it seemed impossible for intelligent life to evolve there. The humans had somehow survived on a world filled with predators, diseases, natural disasters, and wars. They had fought each other for thousands of years before finally learning to work together. The humans are different, admitted the representative from the Andromedon Collective. Their entire history is filled with violence. They've created weapons designed only to kill other humans. Perhaps their primitive technology might work where our advanced weapons have failed. General Crick still looked doubtful. One human ship against thousands of bioships? It would be suicide. But what if it works? Asked Ambassador Zen. What if their primitive weapons can do something our advanced technology cannot? The debate continued for several hours while more Zephyrian worlds fell to the swarm. Finally, the Council voted. It was close, but they decided to send a request for help to Earth. Most of the representatives expected the humans to send nothing, or perhaps one small ship, as a gesture of goodwill. As the message traveled through space toward the small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, nobody in the council chamber believed that the humans could actually make a difference. They were just desperate enough to try anything, even asking for help from primitive Deathworlders, who still fought with metal bullets and chemical explosives. The void swarm continued to spread across the Zephyrian systems, consuming everything. In their path, time was running out, and the galaxy's only hope might be the species everyone considered too primitive to matter. The message from the Galactic Council arrived at Earth's orbital communication station on a Tuesday morning. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was drinking her coffee when the alien transmission came through the receivers. She nearly choked on her drink when she heard what the message contained. Admiral Chen, you need to see this immediately, Sarah said into her communicator. Her hand shook as she forwarded the message to the United Nations Space Command headquarters. Admiral Sarah Chen was in a meeting with the engineering department when the priority alert came through. She was a small woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. At 55, she had spent most of her life preparing Earth for contact with alien civilizations. Now that contact had finally come, and it was asking for help. Play. The message Admiral Chen ordered. The alien voice was translated by Earth's computers into English. The words were formal and polite, but everyone in the room could hear the desperation behind them. The Galactic Council was asking Earth to send military assistance to help fight something called the Void Swarm. The message included data about the enemy, living ships that could adapt to any energy weapon. Admiral Whit Chen read through the files twice before calling an emergency meeting. Within 6 hours, representatives from every major nation on Earth had gathered in the UN building in New York. President Martinez from the Americas. Federation sat next to Prime Minister Chen from the Asian Alliance. The European Union sent their Defense Minister, and the African Coalition sent their top military commander. Let me understand this correctly, said President Martinez, looking at the data on his tablet. These aliens want us to help them fight a war against creatures that eat energy weapons and grow stronger from every attack. That's correct, Mr. President, Admiral Chen replied. The Zephyrian Coalition has lost 4 entire star systems.
Owl bear.
Most advanced weapons are useless against this enemy. Defense Minister Williams from the European Union looked worried. What makes them think we can help? Our technology is primitive compared to theirs. They have energy shields and plasma cannons. We still use gunpowder and nuclear weapons. Admiral Chen pulled up a tactical display showing human weapons compared to alien technology. Maybe that's exactly why they need us. Look at this data. The Void Swarm has never encountered kinetic weapons. They don't know how to adapt to simple bullets or explosions. General Hassan from the African Coalition leaned forward. You're suggesting that our primitive weapons might actually work better than their advanced ones? It's possible, Admiral Chen said. The swarm adapts to energy. Attacks. But how do you adapt to a chunk of metal moving at high speed? How do you absorb the energy from a nuclear explosion? The debate went on for hours. Some leaders wanted to help immediately. Others worried that Earth was being asked to fight a war they couldn't win. A few suggested that this might be a test by the Galactic Council to see what humans were capable of. President Martinez stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. What can we actually send? We have maybe 50 ships that can travel. Faster than light? Aliens are talking about fighting thousands of enemy vessels. Admiral Chen brought up Earth's military assets on the main screen. We have the UES Retribution. It's our newest heavy cruiser. We also have the Mars Defense. Fleet about 20 ships. The Luna orbital platform has some long-range missiles. And there are the asteroid mining ships that could be converted to carry weapons. One heavy cruiser against thousands of bioships. Prime Minister Chen shook her head. That's not assistance. That's suicide. But Admiral Chen had been thinking about this problem for hours. What if we're approaching this wrong? The aliens expect us to send a fleet. They expect us to fight like they do. But humans don't fight like aliens. She brought up historical data about human warfare. Look at our military history. We've always been outnumbered. We've always faced enemies with better equipment. We win anyway because we fight differently. We use tactics they don't expect. General Hassan nodded slowly. You're talking about asymmetric warfare. Hit them where they're weak, not where they're strong. Exactly, Admiral Chen said. The Void Swarm expects energy weapons. They've never seen kinetic weapons. They expect ships to fight at long range. With shields and plasma cannons, they've never seen anyone ram them with a metal hull moving at relativistic speeds. The room fell quiet as everyone considered this. Earth's ships were indeed primitive compared to alien vessels. They had thick metal hulls instead of energy shields. They used railguns and missiles instead of plasma cannons. But maybe primitive was exactly what this situation needed. Defense Minister Williams looked at the tactical data again. The UES Retribution has railguns that can fire metal slugs at 10% of light speed, has nuclear missiles with yields up to 50 megatons. Its armor is 30 centimeters of titanium steel composite. Primitive technology, President Martinez said. Primitive technology the swarm has never encountered, Admiral Chen corrected. The debate continued through the night. By morning, a decision had been reached. Earth would send help, but not the kind of help the Galactic Council expected. Captain Marcus Torres received his orders at 0800 hours. He was a tall man with graying hair and scars on his hands from the Martian colonial wars. He had commanded ships in 3 different conflicts and was known for his aggressive tactics and refusal to surrender. You want me to take the Retribution? To fight aliens? Captain Torres asked Admiral Chen. Just one ship. One ship is all we can spare, Admiral Chen replied. But it might be enough. The enemy has never seen our weapons before. They don't know how to fight us. Captain Torres looked at the mission briefing. The Void Swarm sounded unlike anything he had ever fought. Living ships that adapted to weapons. A hive mind that learned from every battle. Creatures that fed on energy. What makes you think we can make a difference? He asked. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. Because we're humans, Captain. We've been fighting impossible odds our entire history. Our whole planet tried to kill us, and we survived. We fought each other for thousands of years and learned to work together. We turned a Deathworld into our home. She pulled up images of the Void Swarm bioships. These creatures have conquered dozens of civilizations. They've adapted to every energy weapon in the galaxy. But they've never met Deathworlders before. Captain Torres studied the enemy ships. They look like giant insects crossed with warships, dark, organic, and alien. But he had fought in the asteroid belt wars, where ships had to survive impacts. From space debris, he'd commanded vessels through solar storms and gravitational anomalies. When do we leave? He asked. As soon as you can get your crew ready, Admiral Chen said. The Zephyrians are losing a planet every few days. Time is running out. Captain Torres selected his crew carefully. He chose veterans from the Mars conflicts, soldiers who had fought in zero gravity and vacuum. His weapons officer was Lieutenant Sarah Kim, who had served on 3 different ships and knew every human weapon system ever built. His tactical officer was Commander James Wright, who had planned the successful defense of the Europa mining stations, as the UES Retribution prepared. To depart from Earth orbit, few people expected it to make any real difference. One ship against thousands seemed hopeless. But Admiral Chen watched the heavy cruiser disappear into faster-than-light travel with a small smile. The aliens had asked for backup. Earth was sending them something they didn't expect. Not advanced technology or overwhelming numbers, but something much more dangerous. They were sending humans who had learned to fight on a world that tried to kill them every day. The galaxy was about to learn why. Earth was called a death world. The UES Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Torres stood on the bridge and looked at the tactical display. What he saw made his stomach turn cold. The Void Swarm had surrounded the Zephyrian homeworld like a dark cloud. Thousands of bioships moved through space in perfect formation. Each creature was the size of a city block, with black chitinous hulls that gleamed like wet metal. Tentacles writhed from their sides, and glowing eyes spotted their surfaces like evil stars. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Kim from the weapons station. "How many of them are there?" Commander Wright checked his sensors. "I count over 3,000 large bioships, sir. Plus, maybe 10,000 smaller ones. And they're still coming." Captain Torres watched as another group of swarm creatures emerged from behind the planet's moon. They moved like a school of fish, turning and flowing together as one mind. Each bioship was alive, and they all thought with one terrible intelligence. "Sir, I'm picking up the Zephyrian Defense Fleet," reported the communications officer. "What's left of it?" The remains of Commander Veltar's fleet came into view. Once the Zephyrians had possessed over 500 warships to defend their 7 systems. Now, fewer than 50 ships remained. They were clustered around their homeworld like frightened animals, their energy shields flickering weakly. Captain Torres opened a communication channel. "Zephyrian Command, this is Captain Torres of the U.S. Retribution. We're here to assist." The response came quickly. Commander Veltar's voice sounded tired and desperate. "Captain Torres, thank you for coming, but you need to leave immediately. The swarm will detect you soon, and when they do..." His voice trailed off. "We're not leaving," Captain Torres said simply. "Earth sent us to help, and that's what we're going to do." Or through the view screen, Captain Torres could see Commander Veltar's ship. It was a sleek vessel with smooth curves and glowing blue engines. Like all Zephyrian ships, it looked more like a work of art than a weapon of war. Compared to the brutal, organic shapes of the swarm bioships, it seemed fragile and delicate. "Captain, you don't understand, Commander," Veltar said. "These creatures adapt to our weapons. Every time we shoot them, they learn. Our plasma cannons made them stronger. Our particle beams only fed them energy. Nothing we have can hurt them anymore." Captain Torres looked at his own ship's weapons display. The Retribution carried 12 railgun turrets, each capable of firing metal slugs at incredible speeds. It had missile tubes loaded with nuclear warheads. Its armor was thick steel and titanium, designed to stop physical impacts rather than energy weapons. "Commander, what exactly do these bioships do when you hit them with energy weapons?" Captain Torres asked. "They absorb the energy," Commander Veltar replied. "Their hulls change and adapt. After a few hits, our weapons bounce off them harmlessly. The more we shoot, the stronger they become." Captain Torres nodded slowly. "And they've never encountered kinetic weapons?" "Kinetic weapons?" Commander Veltar sounded confused. "You mean physical projectiles?" "Captain, no civilized species has used such primitive weapons for thousands of years." "Well, Earth hasn't been civilized very long," Captain Torres said. With a grim smile as they talked, the swarm detected the new arrival. 100 bioships broke away from the main group and began moving toward the Retribution. They moved like predators sensing wounded prey, their tentacles writhing with anticipation. "Commander," Veltar's voice became urgent. "Captain Torres, they're coming for you. You need to retreat while you still can." But Captain Torres was studying the approaching bioships through his tactical display. They were large and intimidating, but they moved in predictable patterns. Their hulls looked tough, but they were still made of biological material. "All hands, this is the captain," Torres announced over the ship's intercom. We're about to engage an enemy unlike anything humanity has faced before. But remember, we've been fighting impossible odds our whole lives. These creatures may be alien, but they bleed just like everything else. Lieutenant Kim checked her weapons systems. Sir, all railguns are loaded and ready. Nuclear missiles are armed. Target the lead bioship, Captain Torres ordered. Let's see how they handle a taste of Deathworlder hospitality. The first swarm bioship approached the Retribution cautiously. It had learned from attacking other alien ships to expect energy, weapons. Its hull began to shift and change, preparing to absorb whatever plasma beams or particle cannons the primitive vessel might fire. What it got instead was a tungsten slug weighing 50 kilograms, traveling at 30,000 kilometers per second. The railgun projectile punched through the bioship's hull like it was made of paper. The creature's adaptive defenses, evolved over millions of years to counter energy attacks, were completely useless against simple kinetic force. The slug tore through its body and out the other side, leaving a gaping hole that leaked glowing fluid into space. The bioship convulsed once and died. Direct hit, Lieutenant Kim reported, her voice filled with amazement. The target is destroyed. On the Zephyrian command ship, Commander Veltar stared at his sensors in disbelief. Impossible. They killed it with one shot. The other bioships paused in their advance. For the first time in their species' existence, they had encountered something they didn't understand. One of their number was dead, killed by a weapon they had never seen before. But the swarm was nothing if not adaptable. The remaining bioships spread out and continued their attack, approaching from multiple directions. Their hulls began to thicken and change, trying to develop defenses against this new threat. Multiple targets approaching, Commander Wright reported. 30 bioships, coming from all sides. Time to see if they can adapt to this, Captain Torres said. Fire all weapons. The Retribution unleashed everything it had. 12 railgun turrets fired simultaneously, sending tungsten slugs screaming through space at relativistic speeds. Nuclear missiles launched from every tube, their chemical rockets pushing them toward the bioships at speeds no energy weapon could match. The swarm creatures tried to dodge, but they were too big and too slow. Railgun slugs tore through their hulls, each impact releasing energy equivalent to a small asteroid strike. Nuclear missiles detonated among them, unleashing radiation and heat that their biological systems couldn't process or absorb. Bioships that had survived plasma cannons capable of melting planets were torn apart by simple metal projectiles that could adapt to any energy weapon found themselves helpless against the basic forces of physics. 12 confirmed kills, Lieutenant Kim reported. No, make that 15. The nuclear missiles got 3 more. Commander Veltar watched in amazement. As the human ship continued to fire, unlike Zephyrian energy weapons, which needed time to recharge between shots, the primitive kinetic weapons could fire continuously. The Retribution's railguns hammered the bioships without pause, each shot punching through holes that had proven immune to the galaxy's most advanced weapons. How is this possible? Commander Veltar asked. Their weapons are so primitive. Sometimes primitive is better, Captain Torres replied. These creatures adapted to fight energy weapons, but you can't adapt to physics. A chunk of metal moving fast enough will go through anything. The surviving bioships began to retreat, their hive mind calculating something it had never encountered before, the possibility of defeat. They had absorbed energy from 1,000 different civilizations, grown stronger from every battle. But these Deathworlders fought with weapons that couldn't be absorbed or adapted to. As the bioships fell back toward the main swarm, Captain Torres opened a channel to the Zephyrian fleet. Commander Veltar, this is Torres. We've cleared the immediate area. But this is just the beginning. Captain, I don't understand. Did you do that? How did your primitive weapons succeed where? Our advanced technology failed? Captain Torres looked at the thousands of bioships still surrounding the planet. This small victory was just the start. The real battle was yet to come. Commander, you've been fighting these creatures the wrong way, he said. You've been trying to out-technology them. Sometimes the old ways work best. Sometimes you just Need to hit them really, really hard. The Void Swarm regrouped, their hive mind processing this new information. For the first time, they had encountered weapons they couldn't adapt to. For the first time, they had tasted defeat. But Captain Torres knew that one ship, no matter how effective its weapons, couldn't win against thousands of enemies. He hoped Admiral Chen had been right about Earth's response. He hoped backup was coming because the real fight was about to begin. The Void Swarm's hive mind was confused. For the first time in millions of years, it had encountered something it could not understand. The death of 30 bioships' two primitive kinetic weapons made no sense. These weapons were simple chunks of metal fired at high speed. There was no energy to absorb, no complex technology to adapt to, but the swarm was nothing if not persistent. Within minutes of the first defeat, 200 bioships began moving toward the Retribution. Their hulls started to change, growing thicker and developing new armor plates. If energy absorption would not work, perhaps raw defense would. Captain. Torres watched the approaching wall of alien flesh and chitin. They're adapting, he said. Look at those hulls getting thicker. Commander Wright studied his sensors. The lead ships have increased their armor by 300%. They're trying to make themselves bulletproof. Lieutenant Kim checked her railgun systems. Sir, our tungsten slugs might not penetrate that much armor. Captain Torres smiled coldly. Then we'll have to hit them harder. Switch to depleted uranium slugs. Maximum velocity. The Retribution's railguns began charging for maximum power shots. The depleted uranium projectiles were denser and harder than tungsten. When fired at near light speed, they could punch through almost anything. The first bioship reached weapons range and opened fire. Unlike the energy weapons used by civilized species, the swarm used biological projectiles. Acid pods and bone spears shot toward the human ship at incredible speeds. Incoming fire, Commander Wright reported. Multiple biological weapons. Point defense systems online, Captain Torres ordered. The Retribution's close-range weapons came to life. These were essentially machine guns designed to shoot down missiles and incoming projectiles. Unlike the elegant energy-based point defense used by other species, human ships used simple bullets fired very fast. The machine guns opened fire, creating a wall of metal between the Retribution and the incoming biological weapons. Acid pods exploded harmlessly against the storm of bullets. Bone spears shattered into fragments. The primitive human defense system worked perfectly against primitive biological attacks. Direct hit on their weapons, Lieutenant Kim reported. As her railguns fired, but the armor is holding. The depleted uranium slug had punched deep into the bioship's hull but had not penetrated completely. The creature's new armor was working. Captain Torres had expected this. Fire nuclear missiles, he ordered. Let's see them adapt to atomic fire. 6 nuclear warheads streaked toward the bioships. Each missile carried a 50-megaton warhead, enough to destroy a small city. The bioships tried to intercept them with their organic weapons. But the missiles were too fast and too small. The first nuclear explosion lit up space like a new sun. The bioship at the center of the blast simply vanished, vaporized instantly. The creatures around it were caught in the radiation wave, their biological systems unable to process the raw atomic energy. But these bioships were tougher than the first group. Some survived the nuclear blasts, their hulls burned and damaged but still functional.
Ow.
They continued their advance, now moving in a complex pattern to avoid concentrated fire.
Ow, I see.
They're learning our tactics, Commander Wright observed. They're spreading out to minimize damage from area weapons. Captain Torres nodded. The swarm's intelligence was impressive. They were adapting not just their biology, but their tactics as well. But humans had been fighting adaptive enemies for centuries. All ahead full, Captain Torres ordered, "Take us right into the middle of them." The Retribution's engines roared to life, pushing the heavy cruiser forward at maximum acceleration. Instead of fighting at long range like a civilized warship, the human vessel charged directly at the enemy formation. "Sir, what are you doing?" Commander Veltar's voice came over the communication channel. "That's suicide." "No, Commander, Captain." Torres replied, "That's human tactics. The bioships were confused by this aggressive move. Every other species they had fought preferred to keep distance and use long-range energy weapons. But the Retribution was charging straight at them like an angry predator. As the human ship entered the bioship formation, its weapons began firing at point-blank range. Railgun slugs tore through holes from mere kilometers away. Nuclear missiles detonated so close that the Retribution's own shields flared from the radiation. But the most devastating weapons were the ship's point defense guns. At close range, these machine guns could target the bioship's weak spots. They fired streams of bullets into weapon ports, engine openings, and sensor clusters. Simple lead bullets moving at high velocity destroyed delicate biological systems that had evolved to resist energy weapons. Multiple kills, Lieutenant Kim reported.
What?
The close-range fire is tearing them apart. The bioships tried to surround the Retribution, but the human ship was too maneuverable. Captain Torres had trained his crew in asteroid belt combat, where ships had to dodge debris and fight in close quarters. The bioships designed for open space battles against energy weapons could not match the Retribution's aggressive tactics. "They don't know how to fight like this, Commander," Wright said as another bioship exploded under concentrated fire. "Look at their formations. They're designed for long-range energy combat." Captain Torres watched a massive bioship try to ram his vessel. At the last second, he ordered full reverse thrust. The Retribution shot backward, and the bioship's attack missed by meters. As it passed, the human ship's railguns fired directly into the creature's engines, crippling it. "We're getting multiple distress calls from the swarm," the communications officer reported. "I think they're calling for help." Captain Torres looked at his tactical display. The Retribution had destroyed over 60 bioships, but hundreds more were approaching. His ship's ammunition was running low, and the railgun barrels were overheating. From constant fire, Commander Veltar, "We need to fall back to your position," Captain Torres said. "We're running out of ammunition." "Understood, Captain. But how did you do that? Your single ship just destroyed more swarm creatures than our entire fleet managed in weeks of fighting." As the Retribution retreated toward the Zephyrian fleet, Captain Torres considered the question. "Commander, your people have been fighting wars with energy weapons for thousands of years. You've forgotten that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." The bioships regrouped once again, but their hive mind was troubled. They had lost nearly 100 vessels to a single primitive ship. The humans fought unlike any species they had encountered. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no elegant tactics, just raw kinetic force and aggressive close combat strategies. Captain Torres, Commander Veltar said, "Your tactics are barbaric. No civilized species fights like that." "You're right," Captain Torres agreed. "We're not civilized. We come from a death world where everything tries to kill you. We learn to fight by surviving against predators, natural disasters, and each other. We don't fight fair, and we don't fight pretty. We fight to win." The swarm was adapting again. The surviving bioships began developing new armor specifically designed to stop kinetic weapons. Their hulls grew thicker and added layers of shock-absorbing material. But adaptation took time, and the hive mind was learning something disturbing. For every adaptation they made, the humans seemed to have a counter. When they thickened their armor, the humans used more powerful weapons, and they spread out too. Avoid area attacks, the humans charged in for close combat. When they tried to ram the human ship, it dodged with impossible agility. The bioships had conquered hundreds of civilizations by adapting to their weapons and tactics. But the humans didn't rely on a single type of weapon or tactic. They had railguns, missiles, machine guns, and ramming attacks. They fought at long range and close range. They were unpredictable and violent. "Sir, the swarm is pulling back," Commander Wright reported. "They're moving to a safe distance." Captain Torres watched the bioships retreat to regroup. He knew this respite wouldn't last long. Swarm would adapt further and return with new tactics and defenses. Retribution had won this battle. But the war was far from over. Captain Commander Veltar said, "You've given us hope. But there are thousands more bioships in this system. How can one ship defeat them all?" Captain Torres looked at his depleted ammunition stores and overheated weapons. The Retribution had proven that human weapons could hurt the swarm, but one ship wasn't enough to win this war. Commander Earth sent me to test these creatures, Captain Torres said, to see if our weapons would work against them. Now we know they do. But you're right about one thing. We're going to need more than one ship. He opened a communication. Channel back toward Earth. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Torres. The weapons test was successful. Pete, the weapons test was successful. How's that backup coming along? Thousands of light years away, Admiral Chen smiled as she received the message. The second phase of Earth's plan was about to begin. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans asked for backup, they didn't send reinforcements, they sent an armada. The Void Swarm regrouped in the darkness between planets. Their hive mind worked frantically to understand what had happened. Never before had they lost so many bioships to a single primitive vessel. The humans fought like nothing they had ever encountered, brutal, direct, and completely unpredictable. But the swarm was patient. They had conquered galaxies by learning from every defeat. This time would be no different. Their bioships began growing new armor, specifically designed to stop metal projectiles. They developed new tactics to counter the humans' aggressive close combat style. Within hours, it would be ready to destroy this troublesome Deathworlder ship. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Torres watched his crew work to repair damage and reload weapons. The railgun barrels were cooling down, and the missile tubes were being restocked with their remaining nuclear warheads. But Torres knew it wouldn't be enough. Even with their tactical advantages, one ship couldn't defeat thousands of enemies. "Sir, we're down to 30% ammunition," Lieutenant Kim reported. "The railguns have enough slugs for maybe 2 more. Major engagements." Commander Wright looked up from his tactical display. "The swarm is massing for another attack. I count over 500 bioships this time. They're staying at long range and forming a sphere around us." Captain Torres nodded. The enemy was learning. They wouldn't make the mistake of charging into close combat again. This time, they would surround the Retribution and overwhelm it with sheer numbers. Commander Veltar Torres said into his communicator, "I hope your ships are ready for a fight. This next wave is going to be the big one." The Zephyrian commander's voice sounded tired. "Captain, we are ready to die beside you. Your courage has inspired my people. At least we will make our end count for something." Before Captain Torres could respond, his communications officer suddenly looked up with surprise. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from Earth." The main screen flickered, and Admiral Chen's face appeared. She was sitting in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, and she looked pleased. "Captain Torres, this is Admiral Chen. How's that backup working out for you?" Torres almost smiled despite the impossible situation. "We could use more, Admiral. The swarm is about to hit us with everything they've got. Good thing we sent more than just the Retribution." Torres felt his heart skip a beat. "Ma'am," Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. "Captain, did you really think we'd send just one ship to fight an alien invasion? The Retribution wasn't our backup plan. It was our advanced scout." Suddenly, space itself began to tear open around the edges of the star system. Dozens of bright flashes appeared as ships dropped out of faster than light. Travel? Then dozens became hundreds. The tactical display on the Retribution's bridge went crazy as contact after contact appeared on the sensors. Commander Wright stared at his screen in amazement. "Sir, I'm reading massive FTL signatures. Multiple ship classes. This is a full battle fleet." Through the main view screen, Captain Torres watched as humanity's true response revealed itself. Ship after ship materialized out of hyperspace, each one bristling with weapons and armor. There were heavy cruisers like the Retribution, massive battleships that dwarfed anything the Zephyrians had ever built, and sleek destroyers designed for speed and firepower. Admiral Torres said, his voice filled with awe. "How many ships?" "Did you send all of them?" Admiral Chen replied simply. "Every faster-than-light capable vessel Earth could spare." 200 ships, Captain, the entire Terran defense fleet." On his sensors, Torres could see the names of the incoming vessels. The battleship Yamato, armed with railguns the size of skyscrapers. The carrier Enterprise, launching squadrons of fighter craft. The heavy cruiser Bismarck, its hull covered in missile tubes. Each ship represented a piece of human military history named after legendary vessels from Earth's violent past. Commander. Veltar's voice came over the communication channel, filled with disbelief. Captain Torres, are those all human ships? That's right, Commander, Torres replied. Earth doesn't do anything small. The Void Swarm's hive mind recoiled in shock as it detected the massive human fleet. 200 warships had just appeared. At the edge of their formation, each ship radiated the same primitive but deadly energy signature as the single vessel that had caused them so much trouble. But worse than the numbers was what the ships were doing. Instead of forming defensive positions like civilized fleets, the human vessels immediately went on the attack. They spread out in hunting formations and began accelerating toward the bioships at maximum speed. Admiral Chen's voice broadcast across all frequencies, reaching every human ship and every alien vessel in the system. This is Admiral Sarah Chen. Of the Terran Defense Fleet, we heard somebody requested backup. The human fleet opened fire as one. Thousands of railgun slugs streaked through space at relativistic speeds. Nuclear missiles launched in massive volleys, their chemical engines leaving bright trails behind them. The bioships that had been preparing to overwhelm a single human vessel suddenly found themselves facing an entire armada of Deathworlders. The swarm tried to adapt, but there were too many different weapons coming from too many directions. Railgun slugs punched through bioship hulls like tissue paper. Nuclear explosions lit up space as entire formations of creatures were vaporized. The smaller human fighters swooped between the larger bioships, their machine guns shredding delicate biological systems. Multiple kills across all sectors, Commander. Wright reported, his voice filled with excitement. The fleet is tearing them apart. But the most devastating attacks came from the human battleships. These massive vessels carried weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Orbital bombardment. Cannons designed to crack planets fired tungsten rods the size of telephone poles. Each impact released the energy of a small nuclear weapon, and the battleships could fire hundreds of them per minute. The Void Swarm. Faced with an enemy they couldn't adapt to and tactics they couldn't understand, began to do something they had never done before. They retreated. Bioships that had conquered entire civilizations fled from human destroyers. Creatures that had absorbed the power of stars were torn apart by simple metal bullets. The hive mind that had ruled unopposed for millions of years tasted fear for the first time. Captain Torres watched in amazement as the tide of battle turned completely. The bioships that had seemed so terrifying when facing a single vessel now looked small and vulnerable against the human armada. Every human ship fought with the same aggressive tactics, the same disregard for civilized warfare. "They're running," Lieutenant Kim said with satisfaction. "The entire swarm is in full retreat." Commander Veltar's voice came over the communication. CHNNEL, filled with wonder. "Captain Torres, I don't understand. How did your people gather such a fleet so quickly?" Torres looked at the tactical display showing human ships pursuing fleeing bioships across the system. "Commander, when Earth got your message asking for help, we knew this wasn't a job for one ship, so we sent everything we had. But the logistics alone. Coordinating 200 ships for faster-than-light travel. Mobilizing such a force should take months." Captain Torres smiled. "Commander, you're thinking like a civilized species. We're Deathworlders. When something threatens our friends, we don't debate. We don't form committees. We grab every weapon we can find and we go hunting." The last of the bioships disappeared into dark space, their hive mind calculating the impossible. They had encountered an enemy they could not defeat, could not absorb, could not understand. For the first time in their existence, the Void Swarm had been completely outmatched. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen again. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Excellent work. The immediate threat has been neutralized." Captain Torres opened a channel to the Zephyrian fleet. "Commander Veltar, this is Torres. The backup has arrived. The Deathworlder War Armada is at your service." Commander Veltar was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with respect and gratitude. "Captain Torres, Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Zephorian Coalition and the Galactic Council, I thank you. You have saved not just our worlds, but shown us something we had forgotten." "What's that, Commander?" Admiral Chen asked. "That sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need." As the human fleet formed defensive positions around the Zephyrian homeworld, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The species that had dismissed humans as primitive Deathworlders now watched the tactical recordings in amazement. Earth had done something no other civilization had managed. They had defeated the Void Swarm completely. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And if any other threats emerged from the darkness between stars, they would find Earth ready. With an armada of Deathworlders who had learned to fight on a world that tried to kill them every day, the age of human warfare had begun.